Hello, everyone. Welcome. Glad to have all of you. We're just going to give everyone a few minute or so just to get into the program. Well, hello, everyone. So I know that we'll still have people who will be joining us, but we have a lot to cover today. So we do want to get started. Welcome. Glad to have all of you today joining us for this special admission session just for international students. My name is Jessica Smith. I'm one of the assistant directors here, and I specifically read for most of Southeast Asia, some of China, some of India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues, and I'll let them introduce themselves really quickly to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are in your part of the world that you're joining us. It's a beautiful morning here in Durham, North Carolina. My name is Jeffrey Weir, and I'm a member of our international team and glad to spend some time with you today. I read applications from around the world, little pockets from Europe, from Central and West Asia, as well as some of East Asia as well. And so little pockets around the world, and it's good to be able to join you today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fausto Pawada. I'm one of the admissions officers here and also part of the international team. So I'm really excited to get to talk to you a bit today. My regions of the world include all of Latin America, also the Caribbean, but also Oceania. So Australia and New Zealand and other countries in that part of the world. So happy to be here and excited to talk to you today.
Great, thank you. So yeah, we're going to cover a number of different topics today that we are hoping are going to be helpful to you as you are preparing your application. Some of you, if you're considering ED, are doing that right now. Some of you might be doing it in a few months, but we're hoping that this is going to be a really great resource for you as you're thinking about what parts of the application you need to submit, anything that might be different for international students. Just a little bit of housekeeping. So we're definitely going to be answering questions at the end of the program. You can submit those in the Q&A section. We do ask, we know that you have so many questions. We are going to cover hopefully a lot of information that you want to know in the presentation. So we do ask that you wait a little bit before you start submitting your questions just to see if we cover it. And we'll certainly try to answer as many as we can. Certainly use the chat if there are any technical issues that you're dealing with, you're having trouble hearing, etc. Also, this program is going to be recorded or is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel. That usually happens about a week out, so certainly be looking for that. And of course, recording any program that we do on your own is prohibited as we own the copyright. But like I said, we will be recording it for you. So we're going to get started with who is considered international. We get a lot of questions about this from students who are not sure whether they fall in that bucket or not. So just to cover, we define applicants as international in two ways. One is based on your school location. So anyone who goes to school abroad is considered to be an international student. This is including U.S. citizens who go go to schools on foreign soil. And then another way in which we define international is through citizenship. So even for those students who might be going to school in the US, if you are a visa holder, or if you are undocumented or on DACA, then you are considered to be an international student as well. Now, a lot of people are wondering, okay, so I am considered to be an international student. What does this mean during the admissions process? How does this affect my application? So the first thing to know is that the way that we define international is, for one thing, for our purposes. Many of you are coming from very specific school systems, and there are some cultural contexts that are important, and so we want to make sure that the person who is reading the application is familiar with the areas where you live, and with the school systems and grading systems that are there. So part of it is specifically so that you're read by people who know the areas where you live. And then the other reason that we do it is for financial aid purposes. And I will talk about that next. So we are need aware for foreign citizens, visa holders, and that does mean that you are put into a particular specific pool that lets us know that you're international, and you are in a more competitive pool as a result of applying for financial aid, because you're not eligible for federal aid, which means that we would be paying for that ourselves. So need aware, that basically just simply means that we are taking note that you're applying for financial aid, and we are factoring that into our decision. And again, this applies to visa holders, foreign citizens. And then if you are a US citizen attending a school abroad, of course, you're still considered to be a US citizen no matter where you live. So your process is need blind, as well as eligible non-citizens, DACA, and undocumented students. And we will be putting into the chat a link that will tell you what an eligible non-citizen is. But those students, regardless of where they live, and even if they're considered to be international, are still under that need blind process. But again, for foreign citizens and visa holders, you are need aware, which means that that is factored into our decision. And now I'm going to turn it over to Fausto.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. If you don't mind just going to the next slide so I can talk about the two different programs that we have here at Duke. One of those programs, as Jessica mentioned, is coming up. It's the early decision process, for which you're going to be applying much earlier in the year. The deadline for Duke for early decision is November 4th. This is for any student who sees Duke as their top choice. And there is a binding commitment that comes with early decision, meaning that you, your counselor, and your family will sign a contract, sort of, signing on to that commitment, saying that, if Duke offers me admission, I'm committing to going there. So because of this binding commitment that you make, we do encourage students to really have these conversations with their family, with their counselor, and see if this is a program that makes sense for them. There's also a financial component that comes with early decision, right? So we encourage students, and we honestly expect students and their families to have done their homework, to have contacted our financial aid office, making sure that whatever financial aid estimate you're getting from our office and from the financial aid website is one that makes sense for you and your family. The deadline, as I mentioned, is earlier, so it's November 4th. So it means that you have less time to work on the application. But if by the time that the November 4th deadline comes around, you feel like your application is ready, you're ready to make that commitment, your grades and your academic house is in place, your recommendations are in place, and you're ready to submit that application, then early decision might be a good option for you. In terms of a timeline for early decision, you will submit your application in November, and then in mid-December, we'll be releasing the decisions. There are 3 different decisions that we tend to send students. One of them is we offer them admission, right? The other one is that we might defer them. And so if your application gets deferred, it just means that it will get pushed into the regular decision pool and considered within that pool. And then you also, the third decision that we send is you might get, your application might get denied right at that point. The other sort of, I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. In terms of the size of the pool for early decision, it tends to be much smaller than regular decision. It's about 5,000 applications or so. And we try to fill in about 50% of our class. So if you do the math, there is a higher admit rate within our early decision pool. However, the sort of qualities and strength that we're looking for in our applicants tends to be the same as those in regular decision. It's more so a matter of numbers because it is a smaller pool and we're trying to fill in half of our class with early decision. It ends up being a higher admit rate. So for regular decision, this program is non-binding. For one, you'll have more time to work on your application. The deadline for regular decision is not until January 2nd, which means that you'll have until then to work on your essays, work on your activities list, work on getting all those teacher and counselor recommendations, making sure that your application is polished. The other benefit that comes with regular decision is also that it's not binding, meaning that you'll be able to apply to other colleges and universities. And when you hear back from Duke and from the other universities, you'll have a chance to compare, right? You'll have a chance to compare options in different financial aid packages. And if that's something that you really want to do, you're not ready to commit to Duke right at this time, then regular decision might be a better option. For regular decision applicants, we usually release decisions for those applications later in the spring, so late March, early April. And the 3 different decisions that we will release are either an offer of admission, or we're waitlisting your application, or you might get denied at that point. For waitlisted students, you'll have to wait until the summer until we hear back from other students who were offered admission, and depending on how many of our admissions offers get accepted, we might have room later in the summer to bring some students in from the wait list. But again, this is if you need more time to work on your application. This is if you're thinking of other universities too, and you ultimately want to apply. And it happens later in the spring. For regular decision, because it's not binding, after we release decisions, you'll have a month or so to decide whether Duke is the place where you want to go. May 1st is the deadline for you to let us know that. All right. And a very common question that we get in particular among international students or international applicants is what our policy is regarding just tests, standardized tests in general, but also English proficiency tests, which I'll touch on a little bit. For the 2024 to 2025 application cycle, we continue to be test optional. So any seniors or any student applying this year, you do not have to submit your test scores. And we truly mean optional when we say that. If you decide not to submit your test scores, your chances of admission will not be affected. We'll work based on the file that we have, and we'll try to understand through the different documents that we have in front of us. And you will not be penalized for not submitting them. All right. And in terms of English proficiency exams, or policy around English proficiency exams is that we do not require them. In particular, if you attend a school where English is the main language of instruction. Now, if you do attend a school where the main language of instruction is not English, then we recommend them. We don't require them, but we do recommend them. I think it helps us understand sort of where your level of English is and how successful you might be when you enter our classroom. The other instance when we do recommend that a student submits their English proficiency scores is if there is a student that submits their ACT or SAT scores and they feel like maybe those scores, in particular in the verbal sections, are not the most reflective of their English abilities, then in those instances, you are welcome to take an English proficiency test. And if you're happy with those scores, you're more than welcome to send them to us as a way, to show that like your English proficiency is where it needs to be for a place like Duke. At the end of the day, I think we don't want to do a disservice to the students and bring somebody that might not be successful in our classrooms, given that the instruction on Duke's campus for undergraduate students is fully in English. All right. And if you are that kind of student or that type of student that does want to take the English proficiency test, you might be asking yourself, what are the different English proficiency exams that we accept in the admissions process? There are 4 different types of tests that we admit. Listed here: the Duolingo English test, also the International English Language Testing System, also known as IELTS for short, the PTE Academic, and also the TOEFL. Those are the 4 different English proficiency exams that we will accept. And if you end up taking one of those tests, you might be wondering, are there any required minimum scores? And yes, we do. If you are that student that will end up sending us your test scores, we will expect a minimum score on either of the tests that you take. Listed here for the Duolingo English test, that minimum score expected is 120. So 120 or above will be sort of appealing in our process. If you take the IELTS, the minimum band score that we expect is a 7. For the PT Academic, the minimum score is a 70. For the TOEFL, we have 2 minimum scores. One for the internet-based TOEFL, that's 100. For the paper delivered test is 75. All right, so enough about tests. The other question that we wanted to talk about here, because we often get it on our general inbox, but also when we go on the road and travel, is in particular in the last few years, students are wondering, how is, the use of artificial intelligence, how is that maybe accepted or not accepted within a college application? Can I use artificial intelligence to sort of help me present my application? That's a question that we often receive, and so we wanted to touch on that. If you go to the next slide, please. So for us, for Duke in particular, and in our process, some acceptable ways that you might be using artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, or any other sort of artificial intelligence platform is for maybe inspiration to write an essay, or to respond to one of our, supplemental questions. If you want to use it to maybe check your grammar after you've written an essay yourself, or to generate ideas as to, what might be a good direction in which I can take this essay. But ultimately, the final product, right? The final essay that you submit to us should be your own story, right? And should be using your own voice. There's a good New York Times article that talks about this that I read. It's about sort of the difference in writing your own essay and letting a platform or a product like ChatGPT write it for you. And what the New York Times article was saying is that in an essay, generated by ChatGPT or AI will, maybe be strong in terms of sophistication of the English language, but ultimately it will miss sort of the personal details that, are going to help us as admissions officers understand who you are, help us understand you better within your context. So keep that in mind, I think, as you're thinking about how can I best write my essay, what different tools and resources can I use. Again, you can use ChatGPT for inspiration to generate ideas, but I think that the final product should be you. Ultimately, you are the one who knows your story best, right? So you're going to be the best person equipped to write it in a way that is going to showcase your authenticity, who you are genuinely, and help us understand how that fits into the bigger picture of your application.
Okay, so the application process that Fausto has shared some details is kind of been so far what you do. What are the things that you're going to be responsible for as you begin to prepare that application for Duke? So now we want to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about what we do on our end. What are the things that we're looking for when that application has been submitted? So we can go on to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like for us. So first of all, it's important for students to understand that we do use a holistic process for review. And that just means that there's not really just one part of your application that could potentially be a make or break point for whether your application could be considered admissible. There are a lot of different things that we're going to look at and a lot of things we want to know about students who are considering attending Duke. I encourage students to think of your application not as a checklist of where you're just trying to check the right boxes and say the things that you think we want to hear, but as Fausto has already mentioned, you're telling your story, and look at it as an opportunity to introduce yourself in many different ways to the admissions committee that's going to look at your application. So some of the things that we look for, we're going to look at your academic profile, obviously, and we'll have an idea of how you perform as a scholar from the transcript that we receive from your school, as well as testing if you choose to submit those types of things. In addition to academics, we'll see your extracurricular activities. And we encourage students to define extracurricular very broadly at this point in your application. So anything that you're doing outside of classroom is considered an extracurricular activity. And so for a lot of you, it's going to be things that you're participating in at your school, clubs and organizations, leadership roles that you may have. But it's also going to be things in your community, maybe working with service organizations. Maybe you belong to a faith organization that's important to you, and that's part of your extracurricular activities. Maybe it's research. Maybe you have a part-time job that helps to support your family or to provide finances for your own expenses. That's considered extracurricular. Maybe you have family responsibilities, caring for younger siblings or so forth. So think about all the things in your day that will give us a clue as to how you spend your time, what kinds of things are important to you, and those would all be included in your extracurricular activities. You'll also have letters of recommendation. We require 2 academic letters. So think of 2 teachers who know you best that can describe how you impact their classroom, how you impact their school, the kind of scholar that you are, not only academically, but in terms of personal qualities. And then you'll also have a counselor recommendation that's required. And some students may be thinking, well, my school doesn't have a counselor necessarily. For some students, that could be your head teacher or the person at your school that's an administrator, or sometimes we see the IB coordinator. There are lots of different, whoever the person is on your Common App or your Coalition app that's going to send that school profile and information is going to be your counselor recommendation. And then we'll also have writing samples from each of those. So we do understand that students have lots of different grading systems that are out there. And you're going to submit your grades to us in whatever format your school reports academic progress. So maybe that's a numerical system, maybe your school uses letter grades, maybe it's your predicted IB scores. Whatever that is for your school, that's fine. We do not expect students to convert those scores to a more traditional American GPA 4.0 scale or so forth. So whatever format your school uses to indicate your academic performance, that's the way that you're going to submit those for us. We do just ask, of course, that it is a transcript in English. But as far as the format for the grading scale or the letter grades, we're going to take a look at that in terms of the context for your particular school. So it's fine, whatever you have and however you need to submit those for us. Similarly, in terms of school structures, there are thousands of different types of curriculum out there and school programs from all around the world that we are used to seeing. So some of you are in schools where you're taking AP classes, some of you are taking IB, you're in A levels, you're taking national curriculum programs from various countries around the world, and all of those are fine. All of those are great. And we like to see a variety there. So we don't have a favorite program that we're looking for. But what we are looking for is evidence that you have chosen a rigorous course of study, that you've challenged yourself, and that you can evidence your ability to come to a rigorous academic institution and to thrive and be successful. So within the context of whatever type of school or curriculum or type of program has been offered for you, again, that's how we're going to review your application. So we're not comparing one to another, but we're looking within the curriculum choices that you've had at your school. Have you been challenged, and have you chosen a rigorous path to get you to this point? It is helpful when students as well as school representatives can provide as much insight as possible into those academic and life circumstances that will help us to understand that context of where you're coming from and unique circumstances that might apply to you. So sometimes students might need to use that additional information box on your application, or in other ways make sure that if there's anything particular about the context of your educational experience so far that's important for us to know, please spell that out for us and provide any of that information. So now I think we'll go back to Jessica for some support and resources to help you get to that point.
Thank you. So yes, now we're going to talk a little bit about first, we understand that for international students in particular, that the application process to another country can be very daunting. And sometimes you're looking for support that individual colleges just cannot give you based on the number of applicants that we have and the number of students who are reaching out. So we did want to make you aware of some helpful resources for you in your own countries. I have a list of places here. There are a number of different organizations and agencies that are there specifically to help international students who are going through the application process to university, specifically within the US. Definitely Education USA is one that I often recommend. There are multiple branches often in each country, and they are there specifically to provide advice on applications. They also are usually integrated into the consulate system at a particular country embassy. So they are there to help you with the visa process when the time comes for that. They do all sorts of special workshops. All of these organizations are awesome, but I just came from an Education USA conference, so they're particularly on my mind. But just make sure that you know that there are lots of resources available to you. I know that in the emails that we receive, that students are often looking for more specific guidance than we can always provide. So just know that there are lots of places that are available to you. Also, I did want to touch on this. We found this is becoming increasing more popular just across the board with all students, but in particular, we have seen more gap years from international students than anywhere else. So we did want to talk a little bit about that. First, as an applicant for our first year, or as a first year in our undergraduate program, we recommend that students have no more than 4 years between the time that they graduated from their secondary school to the time that they are interested in attending Duke. We are looking for students who have a more recent academic background. But certainly we encourage students to take gap years. This can be an awesome transitional time for students. This can be a time when you can, address particular interests that you have, academic research opportunities that you want to explore. So we do want students to know that we are in favor of gap years, and what we're asking from you in your application is if you have taken a gap year, we're going to want you to not just note that in your application, but also to talk a bit about how you spent that time. We are particularly interested in students who have used that time really wisely, in terms of, now we understand, of course, that there are students who take gap years for reasons that are beyond their control, for medical reasons or family responsibilities. But certainly, we are interested in wanting to know how you spent that time. So we do ask you to share that information with us. The additional information section of the application is a great place for that. There's also a place where you can sort of talk about your educational journey and any interruptions, for lack of a better term, that happened as a result of it. So please use either section to talk about gap years. But in terms of the way that we review them, we certainly take that into consideration when you're applying, and we are pro gap year. So we wanted to have a large portion of this program open to questions. We know that that students also, will always share a lot of information or a lot of questions in these presentations. So we wanted to try to get to as many as we could, and I have marked a few. So one question is, I moved away from my country of birth to another country when I was 3. I completed all my schooling in this other country. I will hold the citizenship of my country of birth. Which country will my application be considered in the context? This is going to be in the context of your school. So like we said before, it's school location. So you will be reviewed from other students who are from your region where you currently go to school. Another question that we wanted to ask, or we wanted to answer. So for an international student, what is the approximate family income for which you will not be eligible for aid? So we want to be very clear that we are not financial aid officers. So while we do take financial aid into consideration, meaning that you're applying for financial aid at all, we don't make decisions on that. I do want to make you aware that we are going to be hosting a special financial aid program for international students on Thursday morning, Thursday morning our time, and we hope that you are able to register for that, because that will answer a lot of questions that you will have. I will let one of my other colleagues. So there's another question. Do we have a minimum quota of international students? So if someone wants to answer that one.
Not a quota, and we don't look at students like a certain number from different areas around the world. Duke does have a commitment to a diverse student population as much as we can, and so we like to see that we're able to admit students from areas around the world. But as we talked about with our application process, we're going to look at each application within the context of that student and their unique circumstances and not look for certain numbers to fill from areas around the world, whether international in general as opposed to domestic students or within areas within our international pool.
And then Fausto, there's a question about what role does the initial view interview play in the process? We know a lot of students are using that.
Yes, so generally speaking, here at Duke, we do offer alumni interviews, right? But it very much depends on availability or active alumni in your particular part of the world where you're located. And so over the past few years, because of the volume of applications, we're unfortunately not able to offer everyone an alumni interview. And so in those instances, in lieu of an alumni interview, we do welcome any international students that are interested to submit an initial view interview. Um, the interview is one that we as admissions officers will be able to see and listen to and will help us understand as part of your greater application. And so it's just an additional way for us to perhaps see you in a different light that perhaps the paper application would not allow for. And they're often exciting, and I think that they help us understand the student better.
So there's a question, if I apply for fall of 2025 and get rejected, would that affect my future application if I were to apply again in fall of 2026? We do see this across the board, both with domestic and international students who apply to Duke a few times if they did not get the decision they were looking for the first time. So certainly we will be looking at the fact that you did apply before. We'll be looking at the application that you submitted before. And then, of course, we're going to be looking for new information should you choose to apply again. So if you do choose to apply again, then we would encourage you to sort of rehaul the application. You're definitely not going to want to just simply submit the application that you submitted in the first place. You'll want to make sure that you have new information to share, that you have done some new things. So certainly when we review an application of a student who's applied before, we will look at their past application and we'll be looking to see how things have changed since they applied last time. And Jeffrey, a lot of students are, we always have, students have the option of sending their tests or not, but a lot of students are sort of curious, how many students actually do submit test scores.
Right. So as Fausto mentioned, we truly do mean optional when we say we are test optional, and we let each student decide whether that you feel like that gives a part of your academic profile that we may not see elsewhere when you decide whether to do that. Last year, I think about 29% of our admitted students did not submit test scores, and that was overall, not just international or domestic, but throughout those students who were admitted for the current first year class. The middle 50% scores are available on our website, just like for any university, you can see those. I just always remind students to keep in mind that as schools are test optional, those are going to be the scores that have been recorded for students who actually chose to admit their scores. So I think they kind of skew that a little bit, and to keep that in mind, but we leave that up to each student to decide about whether to include those.
We have a student who's asking, do we need to confirm whether our school's instruction language is English? So my advice is always, I assume that this will probably be indicated in the secondary school report that your school official submits, but certainly it is perfectly fine for the counselor to mention that in the information that they submit as well. But typically that is made clear in the information that they send us. So there is a question about what specific documents are required for international applicants. One of the things that we really want to convey to students is that the application process for international students is really not very different from the application process for domestic students. The parts of the application that you submit will be the same. They may look a little different, but even within domestic applicants, that is true. Even within the US, there are many different school systems, many different grading systems. So don't feel like you need to do anything differently than what your school naturally provides, other than it being in English so that we can understand. We're not asking for you to submit any additional documents as part of the admissions process. So the application process in that way is the same. So let's see. Going through. So there's a question. There's a visa holder who is currently in North Carolina and wants to know if their application will be reviewed in the context of North Carolina or applicants from home country. So again, it's in with regards to you will be applying or being reviewed in the context of the school where you attend. So the only difference is that as you are a visa holder, you are, if you choose to apply for financial aid, you will be under that need aware bucket. But in terms of your application, you will be reviewed in the context of your school and where you attend school. Just going through. So Fausto, I'll let you take this one. Some of our prospective applicants come from rural international areas with less educational and extracurricular opportunities. Are there any suggestions that you have on how they can demonstrate their potential for success at Duke?
Sure, yes. So that is a really good question. I think that within our entire process, we're constantly thinking about context and trying to understand the context of where a student is coming from, right? I've heard other colleagues and peers or folks that work in admissions use the analogy of, a plant will only benefit from the nutrients and from the nutrients and the food that the soil in which is planted will provide, right? And I think that that's similar when we think about the students who are applying to us from all different places, right? We want to understand you within the soil that you're planted, right? And how are you taking advantage of the opportunities that are available to you within that context, right? I think that our most compelling students, regardless of where they're coming from, are making the most of the opportunities presented to them, right? But if they're, you know, we will never penalize a student, for not having access to this one opportunity or this one particular activity or this one set of classes or this one set of curriculum. Instead, we're truly, that is part of our job, just spending a lot of time trying to understand the different academic and extracurricular opportunities that are offered in your school, in your hometown, and how much are you taking advantage of all of them.
Thank you. So there's a question, we get this question a lot, with regards to, translation. So if you, have a transcript that's in a foreign language, there are a couple of things you can do. One, if you have an English teacher in your school who's able to do the translation for you, that's perfectly fine. You can also, of course, always get it professionally translated. And then I mentioned some of the resources like Education USA. They also provide that service. So if you are looking for additional options, then those kinds of organizations and agencies can help you as well. But it's also perfectly fine for someone within your school who is able to do that to translate that for you.
And
Um,
if you do have, sorry, if you do have an Education USA office close to where you live and you're able to take advantage of that support, it's good to know that they provide that service free of charge at no cost to you.
Yes, that's important to know. How long are SAT scores valid? So SAT scores that are valid for about 5 years. Um, And then this was something that Jeffrey touched on briefly, but just to confirm, we understand that not all students will come from schools that have an official counselor. So it is perfectly fine for someone else within the school to take this role. This can be a headmaster, this can be a principal, this can be an advisor, anyone who is familiar with the school and the system can serve that role for you. Let's see. I think we have a little bit of time for just a few more questions. A lot of you are asking questions specifically with regards to financial aid. Some of you also have questions about the transition from your school from your current country to Duke. So I just want to promote for a moment that we are going to be offering another program tomorrow morning, tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time with the International Student Center. And Kevin Diarco, who is the director of that program. He will definitely be talking about the resources that we have at Duke specifically for international students. And we'll certainly be talking about, how we help students transition to campus. And then again, I just want to mention that we will also be offering a financial aid specific program on Thursday. So for students who have specific questions about financial aid, hopefully that program will also help. So students have questions about scholarships. So scholarships are handled the same whether you are domestic or international. We have a very small number of merit scholarships that we offer. So basically, what we tell students is that all admitted students are automatically considered for eligible scholarships. You don't have to submit a separate application for them. We will look at your application if we consider you to be in keeping with what we're looking for with regards to that, then we will submit your name, as a recommendation. But there is not a separate application for those. I always tell people when it comes to scholarships is that scholarships are a very happy surprise, but should never be an expectation. So certainly most of the support that we offer to students financially is going to be in with regards to need-based financial aid. Just scrolling down a little bit. see if there are any other or questions that are specific for international students. So a lot of these we have already covered in our presentation, which lets me know that some of you did join a little bit later, which is perfectly fine. As I mentioned at the top of the program, this is something that is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. So certainly you will be able to view the whole thing in its entirety. I know that we are never going to be able to answer all questions that students have. So we do want to make sure that you know that you can always reach out to us if you have specific questions. You'll see that we do have an email specifically for international students. So you can certainly reach out to us that way. There's financial aid contact information right there. So certainly, as you're going through the process, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this program up. We really appreciate you all joining us today. We hope that we were able to give you some helpful information. And again, please look out for other programs that we'll be offering for international students. Thank you to my colleagues for helping me out with this program. And to the rest of you, the best of luck as you start this journey on your application. Thank you so much and have a great day.